Hello, I'm Christina Palmer
And I'm Nicole Stout.
and we are two members of the Coventry University Comment Team. Welcome to one of the first lectures we've got relating to Unit 5 on your comment module. We hope you're very much enjoying the programme and getting a lot out of it and coming up with some really good ideas about what you might like to develop as a social enterprise or an activity you might like to use using your social entrepreneurial skills. We'll start by going through a presentation. You will be able to see these slides as we go along, and we may ask you to stop sometimes to reflect on some of the content. So if that happens, please stop the video, have a think about it and then restart it. So, in terms of what social entrepreneurship is, you'll see there that we've got a couple of pictures, and for those learners that are in the UK, these will be familiar faces to you. On the top there we've got Alan Sugar, who is a very famous entrepreneur in the UK and in Europe, and has set up several businesses. He runs a show which, as some of you will know, called The Apprentice, where he encourages people to be entrepreneurial and set up their own businesses. The picture you'll see at the bottom there is another UK show which is called Dragon's Den, and this is where entrepreneurs present an entrepreneurial idea to a board where they are trying to seek funding for their idea, and some people succeed and some people don't. So we're going to talk through some of those issues now, and on the next slide you'll see that we've got a link there so you can watch a video of Dragon's Den just to get a feel for the kind of things that an entrepreneur does. Here we're talking about commercial entrepreneurship. So think about how that might be different to social entrepreneurship. And if you'd like to stop the recording now, have a think about that and write down some of your ideas. Okay, so you might have identified some key terms like you can see on the slide there. Some of the things we identified were learning, social value, mission, accountability, creativity, commitment, sustainability, people. We will follow up on some of these terms as we go along and in the subsequent lectures that we'll be doing. But you can see there it's a very wide area, and obviously you may have come up with different terms on there. I'm sure they won't be wrong, they will just add to the huge amount of terms that we could use to describe it. So let's start by thinking about some formal definitions here. So what is social entrepreneurship? And you'll see there that this is a reference from Ashoka, which is an international organisation that supports social entrepreneurs and has done a lot of research in this area. And you can see on the slide that we've got a link there for you to follow. So we would encourage you to have a look at that, as there's some really excellent resources and material information on that website. But what Ashoka is saying is social entrepreneurship could be defined as innovators for the public, a citizen sector organisation identifies and supports leading social entrepreneurs who are considered to be engines of social change and role models for the citizen sector and helps them to achieve maximum social impact. And this is from Ashoka's founding CEO, William, referred to as Bill Drayton, and he's credited with having coined the term social entrepreneurship. And there's some references there that you might like to follow up just to give you some more information. Another definition that can be used is by Martin and Osberg, and they suggest that social entrepreneurs are target, unserved, neglected or highly disadvantaged populations. They aim at large-scale transformation benefits that accrue either to a significant segment of society or to society at large. So let's look at some of the principles of social entrepreneurship. Well, here we could be looking at things like economic dimensions, a continuous activity producing goods or selling services, a high degree of autonomy, a significant level of economic risk, and a minimum amount of paid work, i.e. at least labour is compensated. So here we're saying that's probably the difference in terms of charities where people may provide work and support for free. In terms of those working in social entrepreneurship and those working who are leading social enterprises, people will get paid. And that's an important distinction with some other organisations. There we focused on commercial entrepreneurship. So if we kind of narrow that down a bit to social entrepreneurship, a social enterprise is a business which primarily social objectives, with primarily social objectives whose surpluses are principally reinvested for that purpose in the business or in the community, rather than being driven by a need to meet stakeholders' requirements and shareholders' requirements. So that we mean, if you think about big businesses, they are driven by making money for shareholders often if they're large companies. With a social enterprise, what happens with that is that the profits are reinvested back into the organisation for the benefit of the community that they're working in, or for social good, which we will focus on a little bit later. So, why is social entrepreneurship important? Well, more than 62,000 social enterprises in the UK, and they employ more than 800,000 people. Now we're focusing on the UK here, but again we would encourage you to do some research in your own country to find out what numbers exist, how many social enterprises exist in your country, and also how many people are employed, and you may see some big differences, which will give you an indication of how popular this model of service or business is in your country. Social care in the UK faces its biggest crisis in 30 years, and we know that's not just only in the UK. Across Europe, many countries are finding great challenges on their budgets to support people in communities. In this example, people with mental health needs. So alternatives need to be found. Alternatives need to be found to enable people's outcomes to be met. And social enterprise and entrepreneurship provide an opportunity for services and products to be exciting and rewarding, and to increase service user quality and also involvement. The way in which people's outcomes are met could be through a traditional model of service where people are given therapy or support. With social enterprises, people's outcomes can be met in different ways. They can still get some of that support, but in terms of working and contributing and making a difference, that actually can have a very positive impact on people's conditions. And social enterprise and social entrepreneurship provides an opportunity to change and generate revenues, structures that can protect and reinvest in the community. And as I'm sure we can all recognise, reinvesting in our own communities to enable communities to support each other more is far preferable than bringing in businesses which are, their primary aim is to make money for their shareholders. So just to summarise that then, some of the, in terms of these definitions, a social entrepreneur is any person in any sector who runs a social enterprise. And a social enterprise are any organisation in any sector that uses earned income strategies to pursue a double or a triple bottom line, either alone as a social sector business or as part of a mixed revenue stream that includes charitable contributions and public sector subsidies. So it's important to think about what is the link between social entrepreneurship and social enterprises. You may be wondering, these are two different terms, but how do they link together? Well, a social entrepreneur is somebody who works in an entrepreneurial manner, but for public or social benefit. And some social entrepreneurs may not set up social enterprises. They may work in, say, an organisation and work in a social entrepreneurial way. And as we've said before, a social enterprise is a business trading for social environmental purposes. So let's think about some definitions in the UK. We've talked about generic definitions, but we'd like to spend some time now thinking about how governments define social enterprises. And in the UK, the definition is that the enterprise must consider itself to be a social enterprise. It should not pay more than 50% of profit to surplus to owners, and it should not generate income from more than 75% of income from grants and donations. So some social enterprises do get funding to support some of their activities, and that might be to demonstrate the outcomes of people who use services, in this case people with mental health needs, their needs are being met. However, the business side of what they're doing and the money they're trying to create would be kind of seen as separate there. And sometimes people may get grants to set up organisations, and we will be looking at that in terms of organisations having set up budgets in later presentations. So if we think about in the UK, the definition that UK government gives of social enterprise, again, we'd encourage you to seek out this information in your own country. The way in which it's defined is that the enterprise must consider itself to be a social enterprise, and that's quite an important point, because actually some organisations may do social good, but they may not see themselves as an enterprise. It should not pay more than 50% of profit or surplus to owners or shareholders. It should not generate more than 75% of income from grants and donations. Some organisations will, some social enterprises will get grants from particular organisations to subsidise the work that they do. But this may just be for a short period of time and is generally linked to the outcomes that the enterprise is trying to achieve for the people that use the services. But they may also be short term, and we will spend some time in subsequent sessions talking about budgets and also set up budgets and grants that people may be able to receive in order to support the work that they're doing. Also, it should not generate less than 25% of its income from trading. So as we can see there, the income that a social enterprise may receive can be made up of several different elements. And finally, it should think of itself as a very good fit for the following statement, and that is a business with primarily social environmental objectives whose surpluses are principally reinvested for that purpose in the business or community, rather than mainly being paid to shareholders and owners.
We will now talk about some examples, and in Unit 1 you have been introduced to some examples internationally. Today we would like to pick up on Bellu, and you might have heard about Bellu, which is a bottled water company. And they run their company as a social enterprise with regards to using their profits, which will go to charity. And they use the WaterAid charity to transform lives of people living in the developing world. And since 2011, Bellu has generated more than £330,000 for the charity WaterAid. So this is one way of using your entrepreneurial idea to influence people nationally or internationally. And the other example that we like to talk about is Bounce Back. And Bounce Back was started in 2010 by Francesca Findlater. And her idea was to give people who have been in prison the opportunity to find back into normal working life. So she is working with people, with several prisons in and around London, and gives offenders the opportunity to work as part of a painting and decorating business. And again, she runs this business as a social enterprise and fulfills the requirements that Christina was just talking about a moment earlier. To date, Bounce Back has supported 80% of these of ex-offenders or offenders who were still in prison at the time. And it shows a really good success, because only 10% of these ex-offenders have re-offended after being brought back into, after leaving prison. And it gives them the opportunity to learn a skill, to work it out in a normal environment, to work with customers. And in many ways, this is much cheaper than keeping offenders in prison. Being trained through Bounce Back at the moment costs about £2,500, whilst having someone in prison for over a year can come up to £90,000 a year. So we've provided you with some links to these social enterprises, and we would like to ask you to reflect on these social enterprises and maybe think about social enterprises in your communities or in your countries, which have a lot in common with the two ideas that we presented here with Bellu Water or with Bounce Back. What do they have in common? What is it they do in the community to improve lives there? And also, what is different between this sort of social enterprise and commercial companies?
Okay, so just to recap then, the top reasons for social enterprise are to put something back into the community and find a better way of achieving goals, or social goals or environmental goals, to make a lasting difference, to feeling good about work. And one of the key features of social enterprises is that it's not just about doing good in the community, it's running a socially responsible business in terms of the way workers and the team are treated. And many members of the team working in a social enterprise will be people that may have previously used services. So it's very important that people are treated with dignity and respect when they work in those sorts of organisations. Working in a social enterprise can be also less bureaucratic. For those of you that are aware of services that currently support people with mental health needs, you may know that there can be times, certainly in the UK this is the case, where they're very bureaucratic. Things take a long time to get done. There are lots of rules and regulations about how money is spent, for example, how budgets are managed. Within social enterprises there are still regulations that need to be followed, but things can often be done much quicker and more effectively, and often at a cheaper cost. Having a positive impact on the environment is important for some social enterprises, depending on what they're running. In Nicole's example of Baloo, that clearly is an enterprise that has a positive impact on the environment. However, some social enterprises will be more concerned with the social impact on local people and communities. Social enterprises also give people more freedom to try new ideas and be more creative, and we will consider creativity in one of our later presentations. And also to improve what was available, and you'll see on the slide there that we've put a link there that you may want to look at, which will give you more information about social enterprise. So finally, we'd like you to think about one last activity before we finish, and we'd like you to think about drawing on your own experience. Think of an example of social entrepreneurial activity, which could be a social enterprise, and think about what motivates the social entrepreneur to undertake the activity. What do they do? What did they do? Or what did they do if you're looking at something from the past? And also, what outcomes did they hope to achieve? So stop the recording now and spend a few minutes thinking about that and make some notes on that. Okay, so you may have identified several things, and keep those notes because we will pick up on some of the points that you've made there in subsequent sessions. We hope that you've enjoyed this session and you found it a useful introduction to social entrepreneurship and social enterprises. You'll see on the last slide that we've put a link there, which is 3 lessons for leaders from social entrepreneurs, and we'd encourage you to look at that before our next session. Thank you.